John 7, verses 40 to 52. When they heard these words, some of the people said, "This really is the prophet." Others said, "This is the Christ." But some said, "Is the Christ to come from Galilee? Has not the scripture said that the Christ comes from the offspring of David and comes from Bethlehem, the village where David was?" So there was a division among the people over him. Some of them wanted to arrest him, but no one laid hands on him. The officers then came to the chief priests and the Pharisees, who said to them, "Why did you not bring him?" The officers answered, "No one ever spoke like this man." The Pharisees answered them, "Have you also been deceived? Have any of the authorities of the Pharisees believed in him? But this crowd that does not know the law is accursed." Nicodemus, who had gone to him before, and who was one of them, said to them, "Does our law judge a man without first giving him a hearing and learning what he does?" They replied, "Are you from Galilee too? Search and see that no prophet arises from Galilee." This is the word of the Lord.
Hi. Good to see you and good to be with you. I'm going to miss you guys. You guys, this is our home. We love being here, and excited for this next season of being with the girls and being, making them, the priority here. It's been a tough season, but the Lord is good, and He's been so good to us. And as we always talk about in John, this idea of abiding, and the last 2 years for us the last couple of months has just been abide. And so this is the pre-sermon, but abide. Believe and abide in Him, and the Lord will get you through the difficulties of life. So let me pray for us, and we're going to begin. Father, thank you for your grace. Thank you for your kindness. Thank you for your word. And now, Lord, as we spend some time in it, as we spend some time in the scriptures, we want you to speak to us. Holy Spirit, you illuminate this passage, and so we're asking you to do that now, Father. Would you reveal any blind spots we have in our life that we might not actually see right now, Lord, but would we actually know you more clearly as a result of our worship here today? We spent time in song, prayer, confession, and now we hear your word, Lord. And in a few moments, we're even get to hear of some baptism testimonies, Father, and take time in communion together, Lord. So an amazing opportunity for us to worship you this morning. So would you find us faithful as we do that? We love you and we praise you. And everybody said, Amen. Well, about 2 years ago, I got to go to a conference. Now, by show of hands, who's been to an adult conference before? Okay, yeah, I see some hands. Okay, so this is kind of this is a big deal. It's kind of my first conference I've been to, and I was at a previous church, but a bunch of us flew to Denver, Colorado, and to a conference called ETS, which is the Evangelical Theological Society. And at ETS, I became a member of the Evangelical Theological Society. All that requires, basically, is you just sign up online and then you're a member. So there you go, that's easy. Show up to this thing. The whole conference is a getting together of all the famous kind of theologians that I had been studying. So you have, it's like a real heavy academic conference. So you have the top people coming in, and all it is it's a hotel booked. There's some plenary kind of big sessions, but then there's just small classrooms, sometimes 30 people, sometimes 6 people. And you have sometimes really famous theologians, sometimes you just have pastors who are presenting a paper. And literally all they do is read. They just read a paper. And some of them are super boring, but then there's other ones where it's there's debates happening. There was one where they were debating the spiritual gifts. And I'm sitting there watching some of these top theologians who I'd been reading, right, studying, they're in the flesh. And then as I'm sitting in this room kind of looking around me, you're like, oh, and here comes Wayne Grudem. Wayne Grudem walks in, right, and he sits down, and So he's there, and then another theologian comes in. And so it was kind of this amazing thing of just taking it all in. I'm sitting there listening to all this like theology. I swear I was getting like 10% of it. Like it was just so far beyond me, but it was definitely a stretching experience. And I'll never forget one of the worst interactions of my life. I finally worked up the courage to go speak to the theologian who I won't name. But I walk up to him, I plan my speech, and I walk up to him and I say, "Sir, it's just such an honor to meet you. I love your books. I love your reading. In fact, my pastor is one of your students, just a real pleasure." He goes, yeah. Where's the bathroom? Right? And so I'm like, oh, okay. I pointed. I had no idea, right? Just point, send him away. But one of the things that was great about it is you had this access to people to talk to all these theologians, introducing people, just saying hi and thanking them for their work and listening to all these papers. And you say, "Daniel, why are you bringing this up to me? I don't care about this Theological Society conference." I bring it up because it's a good image of what I imagine when we talk about the Feast of Booths. And the last few weeks we've been in the Feast of Booths. We've been looking at, Jesus shows up on the scene and he begins dropping bombs. People are listening. This feast, it's almost like a conference. It's been going on for like three, like a couple days here. And so finally, we're getting to a scene here and in a kind of an obscure passage where Jesus doesn't say anything. So in our text today, we don't actually have any words of Jesus. What we have is almost like a fly-in-the-wall experience, almost like a lobby conversation in between, Jesus is speaking. And so, in the same way at these conferences, some of the best interactions you're having with people is in the lobby. You're talking, you're like, "What about that theology? What do you think about that? What do you think about this idea or that? Did you see that debate?" Right? This is what's happening in this passage, is we have now people who have been listening to Jesus speak, going back, thinking about the scriptures that they know. Now they're sitting and debating who the person of Jesus is. Is this the real deal? Are we seeing the real deal here at Feast of Booths? So as we begin, we're going to be looking at this under three headings, but here's the big idea. Encountering Jesus will bring division. Encountering Jesus will bring division, and we shouldn't expect otherwise. We shouldn't expect otherwise. And so we're going to look under the scene under three headings, right? First one, division, rejection, and then invitation. Okay? Division, rejection, invitation. Let's begin. Number one, with division. Remember, this is at Feast of Booths. Jesus has just finished speaking. Now we hear some of the conversations happening out in the lobby. When they heard these words, some of the people said, "This really is the prophet." Others said, "This is the Christ." But some said, "Is the Christ to come from Galilee? Has not the scripture said that the Christ comes from the offspring of David and comes from Bethlehem, the village where David was?" So there was a division among the people over him. The people here are divided. And so right here, we're starting to see people, they're taking Jesus seriously. They're starting to kind of get it. I'm hearing what he's saying, and I'm interested. I'm curious, but I have a few questions, right? There's a lot of debate, by the way, for the Jewish people about what this prophet will be, about what this Messiah will be. So, look, we take this seriously, and we shouldn't actually just jump right into it and believe everything he says. Let's make sure that this lines up with what we've been taught over the years. And so they begin the debate. And here's the debate. You heard a little bit of talk about the prophet, and you heard a little bit about the Christ. So here's kind of what they're figuring out here. John's including this passage here just to illustrate to us the debate that's happening as we figure out closer and closer and closer. So, is he the prophet? The prophet? You all know the prophet. You grew up as a Jew, you would know the words about the prophet. Well, it's the one that Moses talked about. You remember Moses was a great man of God, and he said there would be a prophet to come. In Deuteronomy chapter 18, it says this. This is Moses' words. "The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet, like me from among you. From your brothers it is to him you shall listen. I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their brothers, and I will put my words in his mouth. And he shall speak to them all that I command him. And whoever will not listen to my words that he shall speak in my name, I myself will require it of him." So the people know this. They've seen prophets come and go, people who actually speak the words of God, and that's kind of what the Old Testament office of prophet was. They were almost a mouthpiece of God to the people, oftentimes encouraging or rebuking. And so they're waiting for the big prophet to come. Is this the big prophet? Well, he fed. Remember how Moses had all that manna falling in the wilderness? Jesus, he was speaking, and I don't know, were you there with the bread and the fish and it just kept coming? That was like a manna moment. Is he the prophet? This really is the prophet. No. This is Christ. Oh, the Christ? Oh, you mean like Psalm 89? You have said, I have made a covenant with my chosen one. I have sworn to David, my servant, I will establish your offspring forever and build your throne for all generations. Selah. So the people are awaiting this Messiah to come from the line of David. Is this the Christ? I think he's the Christ. I think he is. You guys should be thinking about that. I think this is the Christ. Whoa. Is the Christ to come from Galilee? Galilee? That's like Spuzum, BC. Have you been to Spuzum? Could you point to where Spuzum is on a map? I couldn't. Galilee? Really? It's supposed to be Bethlehem. Do you know who said that? Micah, the prophet. He said to be Bethlehem, that there'd be a baby born in Bethlehem in the line of David. Okay? I don't know about you, but Galilee does not sound like Bethlehem. The Messiah was to come from Bethlehem. The prophet Micah talked about that, not Galilee. And so on the back of Jesus' teachings, as he reveals himself more and more clearly, the people are becoming more and more divided. And here's kind of the point here. The more clear we are on the person of Jesus, the more divisive we will become, or the more divided we will become. As you get closer and closer and closer to the real Jesus, some of the chaff of the things that we might have believed begins to get taken away. As we get a closer and closer picture of that. And that brings division. That brings debate. Think about different churches hold different views theologically, right? There's division in them. It will bring division. And not trying to do this in a snarky way. That's not what we're looking for. We don't come to the scriptures. We don't come to Jesus and be like, today, I'm going to mess some people up with my division. Not math, real division. We're going to talk about the people that are divided. They're going to listen to me. It's not the snarky kind of way. That's not what they're about. What they're trying to do is they're trying to consider how Jesus, comments. It's caused this stir. His whole passage leading up to us has caused this stir. We're divided. We don't actually know if he's the prophet. We don't know if he's the Christ. Galilee? Nothing comes from Galilee. Are you kidding me? Nothing. And so, if we consider even what this does to us today, if you want to talk about division, right? Imagine today for us when we say, well, Jesus is the only way to salvation. He's the only way. People aren't going to like that, right? Jesus actually, he demands a particular sexual ethic for us to live our life. There's a design for how we're to use our bodies. Oh, don't like that. Don't like that. Think about the raging debate today, right? As Christians, we believe in the sanctity of human life. We believe that in the womb, that is a living person. If you drop that one at work, what will happen? There'll be some division happening here. The claims of Jesus are divisive. As you get closer and closer to who the person of Jesus is, expect division. Don't do it just looking for division. It's going to come. Division will come. And what we're talking about here is we're talking about getting closer and closer to who the person of Jesus is. What we're talking about is Christological clarity. Christological clarity. And what I mean by that is becoming more and more clear on who the person of Jesus is. Some of you might know the name J. Warner Wallace. He is a apologetics kind of guy out of Los Angeles. He's an apologist, has a wonderful ministry. I encourage you to check him out. When he was a high school pastor out in LA, he would actually take his students on a mission trip. And the whole purpose of the mission trip was to go evangelize. And to shake things up a little bit, they didn't go to a different country. They went from LA and they drove to Salt Lake City, Utah. And so they get there, they get down with all these students, and they're like, all right, day one, I'll give you some lunch money. You can go get Chipotle, guys, right? Whatever you want. But your whole goal today, interact with people on the street, go talk to them, go speak with them, and tell them about Jesus, okay? We're going to tell people about Jesus. So these students go out. They go out in the street, right? We're going to tell the kids, we're going to convert everyone, you're going to tell them about Jesus, okay? And we'll have some good debate with them. End of the day comes, they all come back frustrated, annoyed. And Jay says to them, Warner Wallace, what's wrong? I thought you were evangelizing today. How'd that go? Well, it was awful. Well, what do you mean? Did everyone reject you? No. They're all Christians. Every time we say, do you believe in Jesus? Yep. Oh, you believe in the Son of God? Yeah, of course. And then what Jay would tell them, he says, all the people you talk to today, by the way, are Mormons. Salt Lake City has one of the highest concentrations of Mormons. And he would basically set up this whole missions trip to show one thing, Christological clarity. And he would say to the students, okay, now tomorrow, we're going to be talking about which Jesus do you believe in? Ask them this, is Jesus a member of the Trinity? Okay, Mormons don't believe that. Is Jesus, is he the Son of God? Yes. But as the Son of God, God the Father actually was a human who ascended to godhood in Mormonism, and Jesus was one of his sons. So was Lucifer, right? Begin to ask them this question, and then the evangelism, you begin to find out who the real Jesus is. One of the things that I love about Westside, and one of the things that I love about the Bible and how these work together is Westside is a church under its eldership that we hold the Bible as our authority. We say, we sit under it like this. What the scriptures teach, let's understand what that is, and let's sit under that authority. Okay, it's going to say some difficult, tricky things. Okay, we can wrestle with that, but let's sit under that authority. That's the posture that we have here. That's why we teach expositionally. We work through passages. There's a lot of people out there, though, who look at it differently. They hold the Bible down here. I don't like that. Don't like that. The wrath part, not a big fan of that. We'll leave out some of those. Yeah, nope. And they'll close it up, right? And it's almost like people go to the Bible like a buffet, right? I'm going to pick all the things I like, pick the things I like. I'll leave out the things I don't like. If we want to be people who are clear on the person of Jesus, we need to be sitting under the scriptures. We're the type of church who believes in the Bible like that, under the authority of the Bible. And that'll lead us, as we study faithfully, closer and closer and closer to the person of Jesus. And so the more clear we are on the person of Jesus, the more divisive we will become. And it's inevitable, by the way. It's inevitable. So what do you do with divisive people? Well, you get rid of them. Right? If they're going against the current way, well, let's get rid of them. There's rejection that comes. So, John chapter 7:44, we'll continue seeing. Some of them wanted to arrest Jesus, but no one laid hands on him. We hear that one actually a few times in John. It's really interesting. We'll come back to that. The officers then came to their chief priests and Pharisees, who said to them, "Why did you not bring him in?" The officers answered, "No one has ever spoken like this man. Nobody." And the Pharisees answered him, "Have you also been deceived? Have any of the authorities or the Pharisees believed in him? But this crowd does not know that the law is accursed." So they try to arrest Jesus. And by the way, this was seen last chapter in verse 32 as an arrest warrant goes out for Jesus. And so you have these temple guards who aren't like the official police. That was the Romans, right? Roman soldiers. But the temple had their own guards. These guys were Levites. They grew up as Jews. They grew up in that way of life. And they would help guard the sanctity of the temple. They would help enforce things. If someone had to be coming for questioning, they would bring them. Here are these guys who grew up as Levites. They know the scriptures, and they're showing up here, and they don't bring back the guy. You disobedient person, you disobedient guards. And by the way, this is just as an aside, a really interesting insight into God's sovereignty and also human agency, right? So we know that Jesus is not arrested. His hour has not come. because the Father has not made his hour come. In God's sovereign plan, the moment of Jesus' death has not come. But on the ground, here's these guards who actually are starting to believe that he might be the Christ. They're actually starting to believe, oh no, do I want to be the guy who arrests Jesus? What if it's actually Jesus? I don't want to be that guy. And so all the guards don't bring him back. And so they get chewed out by the Pharisees. So they return to the Sanhedrin. And you might hear that term every once in a while. I got a photo of it here. Sanhedrin refers to the court, the big temple court, right? So you have all the different members of the Sanhedrin sitting around, the high priest in the middle. And, the guards would bring people in. If you're questioning or you're speaking, you usually stand in the middle of the Sanhedrin, right, of this room. And that's where, the debate went down. It's where the work and the talk about God would happen. And so here's these guards who refuse to come in. Why didn't you complete your assignment? You dumb guards? Of course you're a guard. You're not in the Sanhedrin like I am. Well, no one's ever spoken like this guy. I've listened to you guys talk in the Sanhedrin. I sit along the back wall and listen. No one has ever spoken like him. So I don't know what you want to do about that. So now you have these guards refusing to bring him in. And the response of the Pharisees is utter contempt and mockery. And at the very end of the passage, they use this word, the crowd, right? This crowd, they don't know the law is accursed, right? When they say the word crowd, they're like referring them to as a mob, like dirty, unclean. There was like an association. These guards are unclean. They don't even listen to their Pharisees. They don't listen to us. We know the law, not like these low-life guards. And so they just belittle them and they mock them. Here's the point that John's getting across. As we get more and more clear, as we're more clear on the person of Jesus, the more rejected we will become. I think there's something different about this guy. The more and more we are close to the person of Jesus, the more rejected we will become. The Pharisees publicly embarrass and shame the guards. You don't understand, like we know. We know the law, you dumb guards. And so they dismiss him, and they ream them out in front of everyone. It would have been really shameful, really embarrassing for these guards. And I don't know, maybe you've experienced some of this today as you've been revealing yourself as a Christian to people, as you talk to people, and you begin to share Jesus. There's a really famous quote from atheist Richard Dawkins. Maybe you know this one. He says this: "The God of the Old Testament is arguably the most unpleasant character in all fiction. Jealous and proud of it, a petty, unjust, unforgiving control freak, a vindictive, bloodthirsty ethnic cleanser, a misogynistic, homophobic, racist, infanticidal, genocidal, filicidal, pesticidal, megalomaniacal. We always get there in the end. Okay. Sadomasochistic, capriciously malevolent bully." That's from his book, The God Delusion. Maybe you've been hit with that one, or you think, and there's people who think like that, right? They just rip you apart. You believe that stuff? Really? Have you read your Bible? I was having a conversation with someone on our Reach teams on Friday night. We were walking up Granville Street, and I'm standing outside of an Irish pub, and there's two Irish guys, and I won't do an Irish accent for you, but they said to me, I was trying to evangelize to them, talking, hey, like, we had our Easter Sunday bulletins, we're handing them out, and being like, hey, we'd love for you to come and just experience Good Friday, come here on Easter. The guy looks at me, he's like, eventually said, hey, we're good. And as like kind of passive-aggressive as he could, he basically says, look, I'm not interested in a place that'll just take your money and then just screw you over in the end anyway. I was like, okay. And so I walked away, right? Faced that rejection. I've heard of a pastor, spoken with a pastor, say he's a pastor in Toronto. And, he was wondering why a lot of the young men, young women in his church who are working in like downtown Toronto aren't sharing their faith. It's like there's a real issue with them not sharing their faith in Toronto. And he finally asked them about it. And one of the guys was honest. A few of them, some of them worked together, maybe at a tech firm or a lawyer's office or something. And they said, it's not that we don't want to share our faith. It's actually that we notice as a pattern that the moment it's kind of outed that someone's a believer, so that someone's a Christian, give them 3 months and they don't have a job. And it's not that they're just fired. It's not that they're fired for being a Christian. We just have seen it over and over and over and over again. The moment that people know they're a Christian, they're without a job. It takes 3 months. As Christians, we need to count the cost of believing in Jesus. Are you ready to count the cost of believing and declaring Jesus? It will follow with rejection. And I think as we face that rejection, which is inevitable, we need to remember the words of Jesus that come actually later in John chapter 15. He says this, if the world hates you, Jesus is saying this, if the world hates you, know that it has hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love you as its own. But because you're not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. If the world hates you, know that it hates Jesus first. It's rebellion against Christ. Not you. It's rebelling against Christ in the end, is what it is. Oh, you're an idiot for believing that. You read the Bible? Really? Are you aware of what it says? You small-minded person. Who are you to tell me what I can or can't do with my body? Who are you to tell me that? Your book's 2,000 years old. It's archaic. Who are you to tell me to repent of my sin? If the world hates you, know that it has hated me before it hated you. The more clear we are on the person of Jesus, the more rejected we will become. In fact, it might mean that you're digging in the right places. You might be getting closer and closer to the true Jesus. So there is rejection that follows. But what else comes? There's an invitation. John chapter 7, verse 50. Nicodemus, remember that name? We're digging back a little bit here, about a year. You might remember that name, Nicodemus, who had gone to him, which is Jesus, okay? So Nicodemus had gone to Jesus before, and who was one of them, member of the Sanhedrin, okay? So he's one of these Pharisees. Nicodemus said to them, to the Sanhedrin, in that court, does our law judge a man without first giving him a hearing and learning what he does? And they replied, are you from Galilee too? Search and see that no prophet arises from Galilee. Nicodemus, what are they saying? Get in line. Stay in line, Nicodemus. Know your lane. What's interesting here is Nicodemus he's asking a really legitimate question. He's asking a very practical question. If we're serious about the claims that are made here, shouldn't we actually evaluate them? And what they're met with is illogical hostility. Complete illogical hostility. And what's so funny about it is the irony. And you'll come across this thing if you ever read literature around the book of John. John is always including irony all over his writing. And it's not like there's no one who really explains that, but if we were in the ancient world, we'd kind of, irony was sort of like more of a comedic device. And so there's irony inside here. He's speaking up here, and not necessarily to defend Jesus. Nicodemus is asking a really legitimate question, although Nicodemus is really curious. He has gone to Jesus before. But, in this moment, just a question to raise a procedural point. And if it works in his favor. And this was a rational and rabbinical principle. And what do the colleagues of Nicodemus, what do the rest of the Sanhedrin do? Well, they're too worked up to listen to reason. They're just plain out mad. And they reply with contempt. Are you from Galilee too? You from Spuzzum? What do you know? Right? They look down at him. And the only explanation for this strange outburst, right, and it is with Nicodemus, is that you must be from Galilee too. If to have such a small-minded view of things, get in line, Nicodemus. I don't want to hear it again. Despite the hostility and noise, Nicodemus realizes that we are being invited to take a good look at Jesus for ourselves. That's John's point here. Despite all of that division, despite the rejection, there's an invitation here, and Nicodemus sees that. And so he begins walking forward in that. I guess I'll see what's happening here. So here's the irony. The Pharisees, in their hostility and their pride, they miss out on, they make an error. Okay? They miss out on the point that the scriptures do actually speak of prophets coming from Galilee. It does. Jonah is one of them, and many attribute Nahum there as well. So if we're going to get technical, Pharisees, there actually are prophets who come from there. But more than that, what's interesting, and here's the big ironic part, is we know Jesus of Galilee, but many of this court, they actually don't know the true origins of Jesus. And we know this. Where was Jesus born? Bethlehem. Fulfilled the scriptures. Keeps fulfilling all of these prophecies along the way. And in their great knowledge of the law, they completely miss it. They completely miss that main point. They're ignorant. And I think this is something to think about here for us. Don't be so arrogant in your beliefs, in your convictions, your theological lane, that you don't be so arrogant that you miss the true Jesus. Don't miss him. We're all invited to know Jesus and then to make Jesus known. That's the mission, that's the vision of this church. We want to know the true Jesus, and then from there, make that true Jesus known. And this gospel is for all people. This gospel is for everyone. It doesn't matter how too far gone they are. It doesn't matter how lodged in their beliefs they are. I was reminded about a week ago, I was chatting with, Cliff and Aaron Ursel, I was talking with Aaron's dad. And we kind of have a family connection because he knew my grandpa. And my grandpa was a hard man, okay? He was like violently Catholic. And that was sort of like, no relationship with Jesus. It just was, I grew up Catholic. I grew up in a horrible, he had a really bad upbringing, really abusive upbringing. Just a hard, angry man. My memories of him growing up, I'm 6, 7, 8 years old, I'd just avoid him. Because every time we'd go over to Grandpa's, all I heard was yelling. He'd just be yelling. My sister had a real sweet spot and was able to kind of, talk with him, and he had a sweet spot for her, but all I heard was yelling. I just avoided my grandpa. For years and years and years, he was so angry at the church because my grandma began to take her daughters to church. My mom, they would be going to church. And it wasn't a Catholic church, right? It wasn't Catholic. And so my grandpa one day, he actually, and this is what Aaron's dad was telling me, my grandpa drove, I didn't know the story until he told me, he drove to the church to go let the pastor have it, right? And he would often let the pastor have it, Pastor McDonald, he would just rip him apart, and then leave. Not be in the service, he'd sit in the lobby. So he drove there to have a word with him. And he got to the church, and there was a bunch of young adults hanging outside, all guys, right, hanging out. And so he said, okay, I guess this isn't the time. He drove away. Turns out, there was no one at the church. Only Pastor McDonald was at the church. And so, whether it was angels or something to spare Pastor McDonald. I tell you that to illustrate how angry my grandpa was. He also had diabetes. And so this took a turn, kind of got worse and worse and worse to the point where, people would share the gospel with him, reject, anger. It came to the point where they had to actually, because his feet were rotting off, they had to amputate one of his legs. So he's sitting there in the hospital, and he's about to go through this, just imagine the turmoil. And imagine if you're not a believer, how you process that. So he's sitting there waiting to be prepped, and who comes walking in? Pastor McDonald, as he always did. And he came in, and he spoke to my grandpa. And he actually led my grandpa to the Lord. After years and years and years of prayer, years and years of being reamed out, my grandpa came to saving faith. And yeah, praise God. So he comes to saving faith. And he ends up, getting this leg amputated. And then the other one, they had to amputate again. And it didn't heal, so they had to go higher. And it didn't heal, they had to go higher. And I'm telling you, he was a completely changed man. Despite all of that, he was a different person. In the last 2 years of my grandpa's life, it was just this sweet person, tender, soft-hearted. You think the Lord can't transform someone like that? He can. And I'll never forget, and this is a line that's famous in my family. My grandpa said, the Lord had to take away my legs to teach me to kneel. That'll preach, okay? God, you think you think people are too, they won't believe, like the Pharisees, right? They wouldn't believe. You don't think that the Lord can actually do that? There's an invitation. There's an invitation. Yeah, but Daniel, you don't know my life. You don't know my past. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know that I keep going back to the same vices. Like, I'm trying my best here. And over and over and over again, it just ends up the same story. Like, I'm not worthy to be sitting in a church, Daniel. If you look, I put on a brave face, but if you look behind what that is, behind my nice clothes, you'll see someone who is a disaster and has no business being near a good God. I just should stand in the wrath of God. Do you know they're invited too? Do you know you're invited too? All people are invited to come know Jesus. You're invited to know him. But have you ever considered the thief on the cross? Do you know the thief on the cross, right? When Jesus was crucified, he's on the cross, and on either side of him, there's a guy who's mocking him, and there's a thief there who actually begins to talk to Jesus. And he says, Jesus, I believe in you. And Jesus responds to that thief, well, today you'll be with me in paradise. Do you ever, by the way, and I've heard, another pastor talk about this, do you ever think about what happened when that thief got to heaven? Right? Shows up there at the pearly gates. Shows up, okay, so who are you? I'm the thief. All right. Why are you here? I don't know. Why are you here? I don't know. Well, what do you mean you don't know? I don't know. Okay, let me get my manager, right? Gets the manager, comes back. Okay, so, sir, you're here at the gates of heaven. Why are you here? I don't know. Well, was there like a theological exam you did? Did you fill out a form? No. Well, maybe you were like, was your family, what's your family background? Like, talk us through that. Like, I'm a thief. That's my background. I come from a long line of thieves. Okay, parts of the Caribbean. That's my life. What are you doing here? Why are you here? The thief speaks up. The man on the middle cross said, I could come. That'll preach too. That'll preach. You're not too far gone. You're not too far gone. You can accept that invitation. You can come to saving faith. You can come believe in Jesus. You can be accepted by him. There'll be division. There'll be rejection. But when you face that hour, right, the hour that we're all going to face, that's going to change things, right? We saw early on here when it talks about Jesus, he says, my hour has not come, right? The Jesus hour had not come. Well, there's a moment where Jesus' hour does come. There's going to be a moment where our hour comes. And then we will have to stand before God and we'll have to give an account. How are we going to do there, by the way? How are we going to plead our case to God Almighty? God, the holy God. What are we going to say? What are we going to say? Jesus, I believe upon the Lord Jesus Christ for salvation. That's all I can offer. That's all. He invited me, and I said yes. And I've lived my life. I've tried my best to just follow him, to just know him in all I do. I've done my best. I've done my best. And because of what Jesus did in his hour, when it's our hour, we can face that hour with confidence. He went to the cross for us. He calls us to now repent, to turn away from our sin, to follow him. And in our hour of need, in that hour as we stand before God, it will be well for our soul. God is good. God is good. Encountering Jesus will bring division, and we shouldn't expect otherwise. It'll bring division. It'll bring rejection. But there's an invitation. Don't forget that. There's an invitation. And aren't you curious what that might look like? Maybe some of you for the first time, maybe you need to re-accept that invitation. Think about it. Aren't you curious? Are you ready for an adventure? Let me pray for us. Father, thank you for your word. Thank you for your kindness. And thank you for this little scene that we get to just get a picture of. God, we get a little moment to just see people grappling with who you are. And Lord, we don't want to take that lightly. We don't want to miss that. And so I just, even right now, as there's people here who are just trying to grapple with who you are, the true Jesus, Lord. Would you help, would you guide us towards the true Jesus? And Father, find us faithful. Would we just accept that invitation? Maybe for the first time, maybe again. Lord, we need you in our lives. Thank you for the cross. Thank you for the Son. And now as we continue in worship, Father, would we worship well? Would our hearts well up within us and just want to proclaim your goodness because of what you did for us? We love you and we praise you. And everybody said, amen.